All
Thanks.
right. Yeshua, go ahead.
Right on. I'll lower my hand here.
Yes, hello.
Hey, Jason. This is my first time on Office Hours, so I'm grateful to be talking with you. I'll give the brief caveat just that I'm relatively new to magic. I've been practicing since about May, when magic revealed itself to me completely unexpectedly. But anyway, so over the course of that time, yeah, just been doing, trying to go very slow and steady and stay with banishing and invoking rituals and just learn them really well and get in a good rhythm and be really consistent. And but something that occurred that was just that I've tried to do research carefully online. I just mean carefully, like having discernment and come to my own conclusion, but didn't actually find much on this topic, which is I had a very poignant dream in which Ishtar revealed herself to me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know, in the course of my life, like I didn't know what Ishtar was. I thought Ishtar was a movie with Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman. It's like, so I definitely didn't call upon her. I didn't any of that, but it's like clear as a bell, Ishtar, as well as a blue-faced man figure that looked fairly Egyptian or Babylonian, perhaps. But so I spent some time just like meditating upon, almost like making a careful inquiry into, okay, like Ishtar, why are you in touch with me? Like truly just sitting quietly and like thinking about it, meditating upon it. And I can't express how quickly very like sexual energy came up, mm-hmm. which I was not expecting. Like, yeah, just like big, bombastic, lustful, it felt, honestly, it felt a little dangerous or like a trap, kind of like a negative energy. And so I've just sort of left that as it is. And I'm not the sort of person who's had a lot of experiences like that in my life. So just curious on your take, like who is Ishtar and why would she be showing up in a dream?
Ishtar is central to the entire tradition. Do you have Book 4 by Crowley?
I have not read it, no.
You've seen it, the big blue one?
No.
Have you ever seen a copy?
No.
Okay, well, if you take off the dust jacket, there's a sigil of Ishtar right there.
Okay.
Ishtar, Inanna. Ishtar is Babylon. Right? Babylon Nuit, right? The sacred, the goddess Ishtar. So tradition. So if I'm correct, Ishtar in Babylonian, originally Sumerian, but Ishtar in Babylonian mythology is the temple prostitute, sacred prostitute, right? As a sacred duty, very similar to the later version of that is the Oracle of Delphi in Greece. But in history books, at least, it said, or ones you get in school, it says the Oracle of Delphi, that's a non-sexual role. But whether it was or not, and I suspect it was, the earlier version was absolutely sexual. There's a good version of this in the movie The Last Temptation of Christ, the Martin Scorsese one, where he goes to see Mary Magdalene, and he's waiting, Jesus is waiting in the outer part of the temple, and there's like a line of like 20 men waiting to go in, and then he talks to her afterwards. So, and it's to the T, right? It's like particularly any Thelemite who watches that movie can't miss it. So, Ishtar, Inanna, Babylon, maybe Kali, right? Like this is the personification of Bina. It is the ultimate conception of the feminine, but complete, right? Or another aspect, the aspect that the Catholic Church has done so much to erase, right? The Virgin Mary, right? So it's the flip side of the Virgin Mary. And there's been a lot of feminist scholarship saying, like, feminists really dislike the idea that there's a virgin whore split, as they call it, right? A virgin whore complex, and that these are siloed into different roles, right? And so I think this has been quite a good, a really good target of feminist critique, where it's like, imagine if they did that for men, for instance, what would that be like? Right? It's almost impossible to conceptualize, right? Because with men, like sexual power is so much tied in with your public persona, whether we describe it that way or not. It's tied up in language of even from when you were a kid. Were you a man today? So um so there's a lot of interesting things there to think about, and a lot of people have, I think, particularly in the last couple of decades. But historically speaking, not speaking in the current period of scholarship and critique, but historically speaking, yes, the Ishtar is the sacred temple prostitute, and so the experience, one of the experiences that is pointed to there is the nature of sexual revelation, and this is one of the whole critical points of sexual magic, right? Which is that sexuality is a medium of transmission between the divine and man, right? There is no doubt about that, no doubt whatsoever. It is one of the best ones, right? Potentially the best one, but there's a lot of them, right? And so but as you might imagine, it is a very culturally tricky one. And one of the reasons I believe, this is my own conjecture, see, they don't want me to talk about this. I'm sorry, I need to pause for just 2 seconds to talk to some movers. I promise I will be back when we will be evening, so to speak. Hello. 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 Yes, it's Jason. Yes, hi. Oh, Lord have mercy. This is the third way. All right, I apologize. So the reason why sexuality for most people is not experienced, this is a really critical point. The reason why sexuality for most people is not experienced as a deep communion with the divine actually turns out to be real simple. It has nothing to do with, oh, they're not a high enough initiate, they don't know the right techniques. Like you look at these books on Tantra and they're all about like, oh, like all these like, weird breathing exercises and stuff like that. It has a lot to do with the person has to be a spiritual practitioner, right? Obviously, right? But it actually, I suspect it's similar to what I was talking about in the last question about social isolation, right? When you're in a city where everyone knows you, they expect you to be a certain person, and there's tons of rules. And our society in general puts all kinds of rules, expectations, boundaries, and matrices on sexuality, right? It's the primary thing that all cultures do. Unless you are experiencing sexuality in the context of anonymity or somewhere where nobody knows who you are and there's no expectation other than money. That turns out to actually be pretty important because that removes all the other expectations. Now, please understand me clearly. I am only explaining mechanics of a certain thing. I'm not recommending any type of specific practice, or I'm not telling anyone to do anything, or I'm not saying actually anything other than just explaining how many cultures why this has been important for many cultures throughout history, right? People wear masks. It's that simple. People wear masks all the time. In everything they do, in their job, in their relationship, with their kids, with their parents, with themselves, online, right? Everything's a mask. To understand to understand truth, or rather to contact viscerally with reality, requires you to drop the mask. And that is very scary for people. And in some cases, rightly so. So, humanity has developed certain methods and ways to allow people to temporarily drop their masks. One of them is ritual magic, right? In the sense that you put on a robe, you do these rituals, and then, man, for about 15 minutes, you can go really crazy. But hey, that was just a ritual, right? That's not me. Oh, I must have been possessed by something. Yeah, okay. What is magic really? What is any ritual? And by ritual, I don't just mean magic. I mean sports rituals. War, in a sense, is a way in which societies allow people to drop the mask, right? But it's done in a ritual context where people go off to war, and there's all these signs and symbols and rah, 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 and they have ranks and grades, and they go off, and there's rules, but then they're up front stabbing people to death. And fucking try put any ideology on that. You know, like I just watched the whole Ken Burns Vietnam War documentary. Like, Jesus, watch that sometime if you really want to be bummed out for 12 hours. Great documentary though. Prostitution is another one, in the sense that there's and the ancient world understood this more openly. It's not that our culture doesn't understand it, because we clearly do. It's just that it wasn't hidden. And I think one of the points that there are so many enlightened or very, very spiritually aware prostitutes, right, or escorts. There's so many, and they're constantly, it's like I've said to people a few times that if you really want to know the truth about the world, like, you should ask journalists, real journalists, not the fake ones, which is 99.999%, and prostitutes, right? Because prostitutes deal all day long with people with the mask off, so they know what's really going on, right? Which is nothing. This whole fucking civilization is like a pantomime. Like it's like kids playing with toy soldiers. It's just bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit. It's people who are playing roles who forgot they're playing roles, right? And sex workers understand that very well, because they have to deal with, I don't know, Eric Garcetti. I'm just picking a name out of a hat. It's not slander. I'm just picking a name out of a hat. Like crying, and asking to be held like a baby for 3 hours. It's like, it's just, it is what it is. So, but this is a sacred function, right? It's the point of Bina is Bina, the ultimate divine feminine. Bina accepts everyone regardless. That is, so it is the nature of compassion to accept everyone. And that is the nature of the feminine at its highest register. It's only human beings that say this or that is good or bad. It's only human beings that say things are dirty or clean. Is not God. God, right? Is not there's nothing unclean in existence. It is only human beings that make mental differentiations between things, and all of that has to do purely with the local tribal rules of whatever civil society they happen to be in. It has nothing to do with ultimate truth. And so for that reason, antinomianism, or breaking of rules, is really important in the magical path. I'm not recommending anything. I'm not saying anything. But one of the reasons why you see antinomianism in spiritual paths throughout a lot of world cultures is when the rules of a civilization are broken, not in a way that hurts anyone. When the rules of civilization are broken, there's a release of energy and a wider perception of what may or not be true. It's the same with a psychedelic experience. Right, where all of a sudden the walls come tumbling down, and you realize that actually you're playing a role and you're playing a game. And this person is just largely constructed. So these are some of the things about the role Inanna, Babylon, Shakti, Ishtar, but um, yeah, you don't have to find out about it from books. I mean, this is nothing. It's not ancient. Let me put it that way. This is an eternal aspect of humanity. This has never gone away, and it's absolutely part of the magical path. So, in a sense, I think that there's a general principle at work here, which is that how do I put it? What are we talking about at root, right? Let's just discard all the language and magic and gods and pentagrams and things like that. A person doing the types of things that we're talking about in these courses is seeking to gain wider knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Right? They want to know for themselves. But it's not just that they want to know things that other people don't know, because those people become academics, right? Or journalists or whatever, right? Like there's tons of people who specialize in knowing information that other people don't know. So it's not about information. What we're talking about is we're talking about expanding one's energy and having experiences that other people don't know are even possible. But even that is not the issue. The issue is expansion of energy outward, right? I want to fully express and expand my being without restriction or boundary, not in a destructive way, but I wish to experience myself, right? What is the every creation myth in history or in world history has said that, it's like God creates existence to experience himself, herself, itself. It's like this is the whole universe is just the universe experiencing itself. So it wishes to fully do so by fully expanding and to expand yourself, to understand yourself. We put ourselves through so many crazy experiences. People will go to war to experience themselves. They'll go through an abusive relationship to experience themselves. They'll go through the building and collapse of some Fortune 500 company to experience something about themselves. And that's their life and their understanding. And but it's full contact. That's the only way you learn, either with magic or with life, is full contact with existence. So Crowley says at one point, the formula, there's Babylon. Babylon is Crowley's conception of it, or it's actually John Dee's conception of the same, whatever we want to call this. Crowley says there's the goddess Babylon, like the anthropomorphized goddess. There's also the formula of Babylon, which is the magical formula. And the formula of Babylon is to accept all experiences, regardless of what they are, 100% of the time. That's the formula of Babylon. And then that is, you are in a sense the whore, in the sense that you turn nothing away, you accept everything, because it's all, and this is undertaken at a higher register of magic, because it's all divine. In the same sense, the non-dual tantrics in India or in Buddhism make a big point of this also, in the sense that they, the Agoris live in graveyards, right? Or they eat trash or feces or rotting human flesh, I've got some fun stories about that. So, which I probably shouldn't mention online, but But the point is because there's no difference. You know, Jen used to put it so well. Jen called this just the path of no distinction. The path of no distinction, right? There's no difference between anything. And that's the truth. You know, that's the truth. But you know, people get into such a tizzy trying to become something that they're not, and it just becomes another mask. You know, it's like, oh, I'm the greatest, highest level. I'm so spiritual. I'm so conscious. I have all the white robes. I'm doing all this work on myself. I fucking hate that phrase, right? I'm doing so much work on myself. I'm having so many breakthroughs, bro. Oh, you know, while chugging Alpha Brain. Nothing. I like Alpha Brain.
Yeah, I've been that guy for, you know, I was that guy for a time too.
I love that guy. I want to meet that guy. He seems. I'm sure I have a great conversation with him. I didn't mean Aubrey Marcus specifically. I just meant it's become such an archetype in our culture right now. It's just the kind of like the kind of Rogan approach. My brother refers to this as advanced bros, which is pretty good. But it's wearing a mask. It's like, you know, it's not just that. I mean, so many people in spirituality do this. This is spiritual materialism. This is what Chogyam Trungpa pointed out. It's like, you're just doing the same shit, man. You're trying to get the job. You're trying to get the promotion. You're trying to get all this stuff. You're just doing it in the spiritual world. You're trying to collect all the experiences. And that's fun for a while, but then you realize, well, but this is just a game also. Hopefully I'm not just being incoherent at this point, but or getting off point. But I think that obviously the fact that you've had this dream is I hate to use the phrase correct, but there are certain things that occur along the magical path where it's just a clear indication that you're in the current, the magical current, right? Which is like Ishtar. You can literally go, and it's not just me, you can literally go talk to any Thelemite and tell them this stuff, and they'll be like, oh yeah, this, that, and then, you know, so, and it, you know, why did these things happen? Fuck if I know, but it is very encouraging in the sense that it's like, wow, we're actually dealing with something tangible, mapped, and understandable here to some extent.
Yeah.
Right? There is a territory. And this is why as I said earlier, it's why I can be such a stickler about, I'm a real stickler about the rules when we're talking about things that have rules. And when we're talking about things that don't have rules, then I'm not. But you know, I've very much made the point to people, I think, that when we talk about magic, if you want to be technically specific, we're talking about the Western magical tradition. And the Western magical tradition is a concrete thing with a history, with map steps, with stages, with specific practices that need to be done, which will get you specific results. And in a sense, the entire thing proceeds from what we might call Ishtar or Babylon.
Yeah.
So the fact that you would start doing what you're just doing pentagram rituals.
Yeah. And middle pillar as well.
Yeah.
But other than that,
and then you're having dreams about Ishtar. Well, you know, welcome to the current.
Thank you for that answer. And that is encouraging. I'll just say briefly, one of the sort of conclusions I came to was that I was specifically presented with a sort of sexual energy because that is one of the pieces of myself that needs to be addressed, or more like the assumptions that I was raised with that I don't even believe anymore, but that are so deeply embedded in my programming that you know, the universe or whatever it is was like, here's a big sexual symbol. That's a facet of you that needs to be dealt with. And it's going to scare you a little bit. And it did scare me a little bit.
I think that's such a apt way to put it, right? Like totally, right? I'm not sure I can add anything to that other than that I agree. That seems to be how things go. I mean, that's how it went for Dee and Kelly too, right? Mm-hmm. And certainly for Crowley in his own way. But I think that, I mean, it's like sexuality is how we come to understand who we are. It is. There's no, like, people talk about sex magic. Okay, like, here's the dirty clean secret. There's no difference between sex and magic. And there's really no difference between sex and your life, in the sense that your sex life, to an extent, is who you are. Now, I obviously don't teach some type of sex magic course online, because you can see how that could just totally go fucking sideways in our current internet, right? For many reasons. And it's also none of my business. Like literally, it is other people's sex lives are literally none of my business, period, ever, right? But I will give general, and that's totally true in the sense that, you know, in the book of the law, it says, take your fill of love where, when, and with whom ye will, right? As long as it is unto me. And unto me is to Nui, which is another aspect of Ishtar. And the point being is that it's like, you know, the religions of the last 2,000 years have made they've broken people. It's like it's not just that there's a relationship between imperialism, colonialism, and the suppression of sexuality. It's just they're the same thing. And it's not necessarily even in a bad sense, in a sense that, like, people knock sexual repression, but take it from somebody who was descended from Puritans. Sexually repressed people can get a lot done. That's why the Protestant culture took over the entire planet within the space of like 100 years or 200 years or something like that, like the Anglo-American Empire, right? It's like this total like
guys.
What?
They were the original no-fap guys.
Yeah, no-fap, exactly. Right, such is the power of our no-fap. But taken as an undertaken as a way to gather power. The Jesuits are the same. So it's not like sexual repression is bad, even if it's undertaken consciously. Control of other people is what's bad, right? And so, the counterpoint is also true in the sense that forced unrepression is also very bad, because one of the things that Marxism, one second. One of the things that the Marxists attempted to do after the first few waves of Marxism was the sexual revolution among the working class, right? Wilhelm Reich was part of that, and the idea that if all the sexual barriers were broken down in the working class, then the working class would attain to class consciousness, and therefore have a sense of itself as a fighting unit, similar to the Spartans, right? In that the Spartan warriors were all having homosexual affairs with each other, essentially. So in the same way, the Marxists thought that if the working class broke down the sexual barriers, then they would become unified and attain to class consciousness and overthrow the higher classes. In practice, we ended up with the civilization that we have now, which is just sexually destroyed in so many ways. The natural thing is, we have the equivalent of, like, you go to the store and buy food, and it's like fucking, like, what is it? It's like genetically engineered powder that constitutes into some fucking thing that's not even food. Like, that's what we have now. But it's like, so it seems like there's no taboos and, everything's available. You can do whatever you want, but people are more sexually repressed than ever, because sexual non-repression is, as Wilhelm Reich defined it, is people misunderstood him, thinking that sexual repression was a lack of having sex. Totally wrong, because you can be compulsively sexual and still be totally out of touch with who you are. Yeah. Obviously, right? Obviously. So that's not the thing. What Reich's point was, he called it orgiastic potency, true sexual self-understanding, release, etc., is being able to surrender to orgasm. And doing that means attaining to a level of self-acceptance and understanding and satisfaction. But has nothing to do with, Reich was anti-pornography. He was, it's like, it has nothing to do with the sexual compulsiveness that has been forced on Western culture since the 1960s. As just another ad campaign of something that is totally personal. It's a colonization of sexuality. It's not some release. The sexual revolution was a colonization of sexuality. It wasn't some release of. Anyways, so at least after the original, after when it became commercialized. So, in Topi, right? It's like the sigil of three liquids was so good in Topi. The first thing that's in the Psychic Bible, the first thing in Topi was, the first magic that you did was that you would write out your ultimate sexual fantasy. Only you, and you wouldn't show it to anyone. It was totally personal, right? But you would write it out, and you'd really have to think about it, write it out in detail, and you would go over it again and again and again until you get all the details right. And you would really think through it. Like, well, what do I want? Do I really want that? Why do I want that? What does that mean? Like, is that really is that really what, maybe something else would be better? Or like, you really have to have that frank conversation with yourself. And then you do that. Once you have it perfect, which can take a while, then you do the magic to charge it into reality. And it usually happens right away. Right. And then the next thing that you do is you think, well, who do I want to be after you get through that? And it's the same. I mean, it's like sexuality is the strongest force in any human being. And if you want to liberate yourself, that's the first and last place to look. Like, forget this. I teach practically. Okay. It's like this whole thing about, you got to know yourself by following all these rules and doing all these rituals and being a holy person and all this stuff. That's horse shit. Okay. If you want that, join the Catholic Church. Right. It's show. It's a mask. Anything that you do to put on a mask of being something that you're not. I think the goal of magic, ties into the first answer, the whole thing about like divinity manifesting from above. Well, I think that the goal is not to get to something else. I mean, that already presumes that you want to be somewhere that you're not. I think the goal of magic is simply to become more human, right? I don't even like the word spirituality. What am I, fucking Casper? Like, I think humanity, just call it humanity. I mean, it sounds fucking whack, but like, whatever. I mean, that would be a better word. It's because it's not about being something that you're not. It's about becoming who you are. It's about becoming more human and present and real, and not fucking wrapped up in these abstractions and things like this. And a big part of becoming who you are is not giving a fuck anymore. Not in some performative manosphere bullshit way, but just like understanding who you are and knowing what you want and being cool with it. And that's tricky. I mean, saying, that always has to be negotiated with society as well. Because I think that it's like, and it's not so straightforward either, because like for most dudes would be like, oh, well, like, yeah, I want to be like fucking, George Clooney and like, have like 80 girlfriends like every week and all this shit. It's like, well, sure, you can do that for a while, but then you find out it's like total chaos and stress, nightmare, and then, like, you have to ask yourself what you really want, right? That's all it is. What do you really want? That's all it is, because if what you want will always require something else to be sacrificed as well. And in a sense, it's like, this is, sexual repression can also be very important in the sense that civilization is not possible without it. It's just not, right? Because if we didn't have the executive function to not constantly be giving into our animal impulses, it would just be people fucking like shooting each other. I mean, there wouldn't be any civilization. So this is a ramble, but I think that I'll wrap up with this. I think hopefully this ties things together. Magic is about knowing who you are. It's about, in a real way, not becoming what somebody else wants you to be, not becoming what some book on magic or writer on magic wants you to be, but really having that conversation with yourself, like, who am I really, and what do I want in this limited life that I have? And that's really tough, and it's really painful too, right? Because to do that, you have to think, you just have to work through a lot. You have to think like, well, why? You have to become very self-responsible. You have to think through what you don't want, the things in your life where you feel that you haven't been who you know you can be, and why that was. That's very painful, right? Um, but it requires a lot of honesty. And one of the incredible things about magic, though, is that, Brian Geisen used the phrase temple of extreme experience. I like that so much. Magic will guide you towards extreme experiences that will be so intense or so out of the blue that you won't know what the fuck is going on. And you will have to bring something out of yourself just to, even if you end up, as I have many, many times, the occult path has led me into places that are just totally fucked. Like I could have died many times over, just fucked. And but my reaction to them and my sense of this is not what I want, and then falling back on my core of what I do want is also a tremendous revelation of truth, right? So, but the temple of extreme experience, that's another way to say temple initiation. And the temple initiation is not the Golden Dawn temple, and it's maybe not even the temple of Ishtar, right? It's your life. So, I don't know. Beyond that, I'm just going to sound redundant and retarded. So, hopefully, something in there is hopeful.
Yes, it is. Thank you for that. And
But just keep going.
I sure will. Right on. Thank you. Take care.
Yeah. I should rewatch that Warren Beatty movie, though. We should have a movie night with that. That would probably be pretty funny. It's supposed to be the worst movie. Have you seen it? It's supposed to be the worst movie of all time.
It's not quite the worst of all time, but it's just a very curious. It's bizarre that it even exists. Just a strange little movie, but fun in its own way. Fun for being.
What is so bad about it? It was always on TV when I was a kid.
Just really bad writing, and it's kind of split down. It doesn't know what it's trying to be. There's comedic parts, and there's like these folky, singy songwriter parts, but it just bad writing. With somehow two huge stars at the time. So,
it was always one star on the TV guide. I remember that when I was a kid. But they always had it on at like 3 a.m, and I would always see it in the TV guide. I could never stay up that late, but I would always be like, "What the hell is this movie?" When I was like 7. And I think, don't they make fun of it in UHF, that Weird Al movie?
I don't recall, but that could be.
Yeah, we'll do a Magic Me movie night on the Discord.